Photographing your paper sculptures. This exercise is about exploring ways to photograph your paper sculpture using directional artificial lighting in a space. I use a tabletop and white paper as a clean backdrop for both the horizontal and vertical. The white paper shows up all the interesting shadows which emerge as the light is moved around the object. The shadows formed can become an additional part of your imagery, developing your artwork further. I start with side lighting, using a halogen lamp to direct light sideways across the paper sculpture as it sits on the white background. I use a bird's eye view angle to take the photographs of the work, moving the camera close in to various parts of the sculpture, changing the angle of the camera as I go. I might try directing light from behind the paper sculpture, which works here to backlight the tracing paper sculptures in space, emphasising the string detail within the boxes. Play around with the positioning of your sculptures to experiment with compositions in space. You might notice how different edges of the sculptures pick up the light and texture differently. Here is a front-on light source to the paper sculpture, casting shadows behind onto the white backdrop. Try moving the object closer and further away from the light to achieve differences in shadow strength and definition. The 3D nature of sculpture will demonstrate to you how light falls onto an object. Watch to see where the shadows fall. These can become part of your composition, changing the way you view your sculpture. With paper sculpture that is more textured, try side-on camera angles to emphasise the depth of the artwork. Using a plain backdrop and close-in composition, the sculpture takes on a sense of another world without limits, concealing the true scale of the sculpture. Small paper strips here in this sculpture take on a greater importance and impact when viewed from the side. Here this process is played out again with this low-relief sculpture. I start with an overall view with direct frontal lighting. I bring the camera down low and to the side to emphasise the texture and edges of the work. I turn the work over and backlight, showing a new surface, colour from the tape, texture from the stitching and pinholes of light from the needle. The final exercise to try is using a filter to photograph your work through. I suspend some tracing paper from a rail, taping the sculpture to the tracing paper. I direct light onto the sculpture and then photograph the work from the other side of the tracing paper. So the sculpture is backlit and has a filter of tracing paper in front. The result is a clear silhouette of the sculpture through the tracing paper which acts to diffuse the light. I can then move my camera around the silhouette, playing with composition, showing detail of shape and line. The intensity of the silhouette can be varied by changing the distance and angle of the light source. It blurs and distorts the silhouette. Try photographing head-on and slightly to the side of the tracing paper, further distorting the way the shape of the sculpture is viewed. Here's how I used the same approach, but this time using the paper boxes, which were lined up close to the tracing paper filter. The light is close to the boxes. When viewed from the other side of the tracing paper, you can see how the sculpture is transformed through the paper. Tracing paper has a lovely grainy surface which is accentuated through backlighting. I love the strong shadows cast on the paper, distorting how we understand the shape and edges of the box in space. This exercise, I hope, demonstrates the magic that can occur when photographing your work through thoughtful lighting.